Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are playing ninjas, but this is a good stuff's ninja build. So for those who are unfamiliar, ninjas are this selection of creatures. So the main ones you see are the ones that cost blue and a black to ninjutsu in, so whenever you attack and your attacker is unblocked, you can flip it back to your hand and put this creature instead, and that can't be countered. It can be stifled though. And then this one, when it deals combat damage, whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage, you reveal a top card of your library, put it into your hand, each opponent loses life equal to its mana value. Then we have this one, which is whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage, draw a card. So those are the two main ones, and then there's a new one, or relatively new one from Dustmourne, Kaito. So this is a planeswalker that attacks as a 3/4, has a bunch of abilities, and just absolutely ruins games for your opponent. Really strong card, and I think this deck is very good at leveraging it. So the good stuff I speak of, we have 4 Bowmasters, 4 Baleful Strix, and 4 Tamiyo. So we're not messing around with our Ornithopters or changing outcasts or anything like that. We're just playing a bunch of good cards so we can play a nice fair game, but we've also got like some secret psychic frogs in our deck from the Yuriko and the Ingenious Infiltrator. So I'm curious to see how this one pans out. We've got ourselves the good blue stuff in Force of Will, Daze and Ponder Brainstorm. And then we've got a nice selection of interaction with Nihil Spellbomb. I really like a main deck Nihil Spellbomb in any deck that can run it at the moment. We've got a couple of Sheoldred Edicts, a couple of Fatal Pushes, and a Murderous Cut, as well as this Borrower. So we've got a lot of ways of interacting with what our opponent's doing. Obviously, Baleful Strix just holding off a bunch of creatures is nice too. In the mana base, we're not doing anything weird. We've got a lot of basics, and we've got 1 Underground Sea, 1 Undercity Sewers. So we are not getting jammed up by Wastelands or Blood Moons or anything like that. And we're not playing Wastelands ourselves, which I think is now the standard for ninjas, and it has been for a little while, and I think it is correct as well. Sideboard-wise, we've got a nice Barrowgoyf, just a common threat you see when you need additional threats out of pretty much any black deck. A bit more graveyard hate in the form of Faerie and the Nihil Spellbomb. A bit more removal in the form of Dismember. We've got ourselves explosives, which can blow up a lot of zero drops, things like the Urza Saga tokens, for example, or can blow up a bunch of keys or whatever out of those sorts of decks. Then we have 3 Harbinger of the Seas to really stick it to Eldrazi, along with 2 Consign to Memory, and then a couple of Thoughtseize to help out in our combo matchups. And that is what we're playing today. I believe the donor who submitted this recently 5-0'd a league with a deck like this, so I'm curious to see how we get on. So please remember to like and subscribe, and let's play some good stuff's ninjas. If you want to play some Eternal Magic, why not check out the New York City first annual Eternal Team Trios Winter Tournament. This is a legacy, modern and vintage team event, and team events are always some of the best of Magic events going, so why not check it out if you're in the area. Okay, so we start off with a nice island here. We've got Tamiyo to start doing its thing. We've got a spare Tamiyo which we can pitch to Force of Will. We've got a Daze we can fire off. And then we can just start riding the clues on the Tamiyo to victory in theory. Polluted Delta. Play this out. We're not going to do anything here. We're just going to hold up our Bowmasters or the ability to pay for our opponent's Dazes, because we might need to deal with an Entomb at end of turn. Like, as soon as you see a fetch that can fetch a black source and they just pass, you have to expect Entomb and play around it, because otherwise you just get blown out. It's quite a format warping card. It just changes how you have to approach every game. Okay, what we're going to see here. A Thundering Falls. Okay, so probably on something more resembling Sneak and Show, I would imagine. It could just be straight up Blue-Red Delver, but normally they tend to run a Tropical Island in the slot so they can run the Questing Druid and cast the backside. We've built over a mountain, so this does feel like Sneak and Show to me. So we could deploy this Bowmasters now. I think it's safe to do so, and our opponent is unlikely to be a Bowmasters deck. They're doing the play patterns that make me think they're playing Sneak and Show. So we're just going to get this down. So we start applying some pressure, and then hopefully sit on our little wall of counter magic here. And if we need to change things up, we can do. I'm going to hold up my mana. We're not going to make a land up this turn, which is obviously a bit sad. But I think having the ability to have the most amount of mana to play around soft permission. So this way we can play around something like a Spell Pierce. If our opponent goes like Ancient Tomb, Show and Tell, holding up Spell Pierce, we can say, no, we can pay for that. And we still get to use our mana for the clue token here. Alright, 5 cards left in our opponent's hand. Plenty of mana over there. So this is a sneak attack. I would like to try and Force of Will this sneak attack. It worked. Huh. Kind of surprising, actually. Alright, and our opponent's end step will draw a card here. This probably means they have multiple combo pieces. So they can just keep sending it until it stops working. Alright, I'm going to play out this Polluted Delta. I'm going to... We have to make a decision here. Is it better for us to have the ability to play around some soft permission and draw a card here? Or do we just want to get Kaito in and then we can start jamming stuff up? I think I want the Kaito here. So we're going to attack, get a clue. So the Kaito can freeze down any of their guys as well, if it comes to it. So this is going to get us a card anyway. It's going to be like Pondering. What am I going to send back to our hand here? Honestly, I think it's probably the Orc Army token. The Bowmasters being in play is really useful. So now we get to deal damage to our opponent. And then we get to Surveil 2 and then draw a card. So this is kind of like doing the Ponder here. I don't really want this Ponder. Don't really want this Yuriko. We just want more counter spells. And we found one. Excellent. Beautiful. Happy with our position here. So this is potentially 4-5 damage next turn. So we've got our opponent on a 2-turn clock if we want it, or we can sculpt for more resources here. We're probably going for the 2-turn clock. Go upstairs with this. Again, we don't need to do anything here. We could Ponder and try and hit a land drop. I think that's reasonable. Sink into Stupor is a land. Is it what I want, though? I don't really want these other two Kaitos. I think this is in any order in shuffle. Ingenious Infiltrator. I don't think that's a thing we wanted to do and flip one of our guys back, because Kaito being in play is really good. Having Orcish Bowmasters in play is really good, and just getting these free bonus cards every turn. Alright, so this is going to be a pretty painful Brainstorm for our opponent, because our Bowmaster gets to ping them. Now, it's possible they have something like a Veil of Summer, so they can counteract the pings. Or they might just be able to win the game here. But this turns off their Ancient Tomb, which is big news. Okay, so we stopped our opponent's first thing, and they never quite managed to do a second thing. Beautiful. Love it. What are we doing now? We don't need a Nihil Spellbomb, so that can go. I would like the 2 Thought Seizers. These seem like pretty useful cards to have access to. Besides that, none of this is really exciting me very much. So Consign to Memory can counter specifically like a trigger. So that could be an Annihilator trigger. It could be an Atraxa trigger. The other thing it can counterspell is Lotus Petals and the One Rings. So if we have the space for this, I'm down. But I think we're cutting these 2 Fatal Pushes. That gets us 1 Consign to Memory. So the Sheoldred's Edicts can kill Emrakul. The Murderous Cut can't kill Emrakul, but can kill a pivot plan that they might have, as well as being able to kill an Atraxa. Would I rather have a Consign than the Murderous Cut? I think that's probably where I'd rather be. It's more blue cards, so it makes our forces better. And maybe we like stop a clutch trigger or a One Ring that just could run away with the entire game. Because the Atraxa body isn't that much of an issue. Like, it's annoying, but we can tap it down a bunch. We can remove it eventually. We can bounce it. You know, these things are fine. It's the trigger that actually kills us. So if we can stop the trigger and stop them getting all the cards, and they spent a bunch of resources just to get a body in play. So this hand does have a little bit of permission. It's quite slow to form its own plan, but we have a Brainstorm to help us sculpt towards something. So I think this is fine. It's very unlikely that we need to worry about our opponent interacting with our lands like a Blood Moon, but we're going to be fetching basics anyway, because that's how our deck is set up to operate. I think we play out the Polluted Delta, because this gives us access to a one-of Surveil land in our deck. At the end steps, we can get a little bit more selection. Sink into Stupor can bounce spells, so we can bounce like a sneak attack on the stack. So this is going to be a copy of the One Ring. And we're going to say no to One Ring, because that is not something we're ready to deal with. Yggdrasil. Honestly, this card has not impressed me very much. I don't know if we're supposed to fight over this or if we're supposed to try and sink into Stupor. We have 1 counter spell, but we have a couple of bounce spells in hand. So they could make a big monster as early as next turn. Is that something we're fighting over? We could go get the Surveil land, because we don't have to worry about Daze from our opponent here. So we get the Surveil land, see what we're drawing into, and see if it changes how we want to approach what our opponent's doing. Another land. That is a thing that we are after, but is it what we want right now? I don't think it is. How do I feel about this? So this is the card that I've not actually lost to. I've seen it in play a lot and it's not done anything. It has to be pretty fortunate, but they haven't cast any of their Brainstorms and stuff, so maybe they can put this into action by brainstorming creatures on top. I really don't know about this one, because we have to sink into Stupor. So this turn it taps for 3. Next turn... Basically, they get 1 turn of this to be good. But it will have 6 creatures underneath it at that point, right? I hate having the Brainstorm this. It's such a whatever sort of card, really. I think we're going to get rid of the Yuriko. A Force of Will. Okay, so they pitched a Brainstorm. So at least we've got the Brainstorm, which makes this worse as a card. Let's see how lucky they get with the rips on this. Okay, they're not doing it yet. Sheoldred's Edict. That is one I am happy to have access to right now. Sneak Attack, Force of Will, Polluted Delta. We don't care about those things. So they get to tap it this time. And then we're okay. If they set anything up with a Brainstorm, then we obviously get to try and blow them out with a Sink into Stupor. A Show and Tell. So we have 2 options here. We can either Brainstorm looking for an answer, or we can just try and Sheoldred's Edict whatever comes out of it. I think the correct play is to Brainstorm. These are not really the things we wanted, are they? I will take this land for next turn. What are we going to put away here? The Kaito is something that can tap down any spooky creatures. I guess we're going to put that away, the Orcish Bowmasters. This is not a creature, though. So we get to put in our Polluted Delta. So this ramps us a little bit. And they have an Emrakul. So what we can do here is in our opponent's end step, we can try and delete this. So we'll go and get just an island in the swamp here. Just keep it simple. If the last card in the hand is Daze, then that's pretty annoying for us. Each opponent sacrifices a creature, a non-token creature of their choice. Make sure I click the right one. So we do this now, so that if it doesn't work, we can play the Kaito and tap it down. So now we can play this Brainstorm, and then we can play a Sink into Stupor if we want to. Okay, I like having another Force of Will available. We're playing a Sink into Stupor and bouncing this in a second anyway, which means we might as well just put the 2 Ponders on top for now. I like having the Kaito, so let's play this. Lose 3 life. Then we're going to tap this. We want them to exile more cards from their deck, and then we'll bounce it. What have they got? Sneak Attack, Brainstorm, Show and Tell. We don't actually care about any of these. So we don't need to bounce this yet. A Mountain. I would like to bounce this, please. Because this means we just have all of our mana for this Kaito. And they don't get to redeploy it yet, so there's another 2 turns before it can do anything. Alright, let's play our win condition. I think first time around, we're just going to make an emblem. And then hopefully this can carry us to victory. We've got Force of Will blue card, which is a nice place to be. Do I need to counterspell Yggdrasil? I guess we see what they play, because if they play the Yggdrasil... Okay, they're going for a Ponder first. Because the Yggdrasil is the least threatening of our opponent's big spells. Like, as you saw, they had it for a bunch of turns and it did literally nothing. That was a shuffle off the Ponder, so that's good news for us. They didn't have the things they wanted. They could play a Sneak Attack right now. They're going to go for the Yggdrasil again. They are going for the Yggdrasil. They don't really have anything going on, so I think I'm just going to say no to this one. Because this can win the game. Like they haven't hit anything with it yet, but I don't want to risk them hitting something with it in future. Okay, so I can Ponder here, and then I can Surveil with the Kaito. Baleful Strix, Ingenious Infiltrator. I don't want any of these things. Like, I don't mind having the Baleful Strix. It draws a card, but it's not really that exciting, is it? I think we're just looking for counter spells. Okay, we can attack with this. We're not going to play out our Tamiyo until we see what we're getting off the Kaito, because it might be... So this is dealing 4 damage, so if we'd have plussed it, we'd have dealt them another damage, and then we could have plussed it next turn. And so maybe we missed some time, but I think we need to Surveil here and just get a card. Graveyard. Graveyard. We draw an Underground Sea. So I think this means we're playing out the Tamiyo, because this equals more cards next turn. So this is our opponent's window. And that window has closed. A Daze, unlikely to be the most useful thing we've ever drawn. But I'd rather have it than nothing. Alright, I'm going to draw a card with this clue token. It didn't get us anything we wanted. I'm going to play on this island so that we can play around soft permission a bit more easily. So if we'd have upped the Kaito last turn, it would have been better. We would have been able to put our opponents so they can't tap any Ancient Tombs. And then our Daze becomes live. However, trying to dig for counter magic feels better. Oh wait, did we miss activating the Kaito that turn? We did. We got the GGs from the opponent. I assume that means we've won. Alright, so we definitely could have approached that differently. I think we're right to be surveilling for answers rather than trying to take one turn off the clock, because we have so many answers in our deck. So we've got the Thought Seizes, we got the Force of Wills, Daze is less so, but they can still work, and the Consign to Memory. If we can consign a trigger in that stage, then we're probably going to be okay. So I like the choices we made. I think we did miss a surveil off of this Kaito on the last turn, because I was too busy talking about some other stuff. But yeah, 1-0, let's go to round 2. We're going to keep this hand. But what are we going to do with it? A Meticulous Archive. Stoneforge Mystic. Alright, we're on some sort of Stoneforge-y plan. I believe that means, unless we draw a land here, we're going to play this as our blue source. And then we're going to deploy the Tamiyo. And if we can parlay this into being a Yuriko, then I think we'll be in a pretty good spot. We've got a Force of Will to stop anything too spooky. We're going to see another Stoneforge Mystic. They surveilled one away. This is the sort of thing that you would probably keep, so I imagine they have another one. Do I care about them prismatic ending this creature? It is annoying. We do get to snowball pretty hard. They're playing around Daze. Alright, I'm going to defend this Tamiyo. It's going to get back its own value pretty soon anyway. Alright, so we're getting a Force of Will fight here. Okay, that doesn't strike me as being amazing for us. Our opponent has the ability, probably in their deck, to grind very well. They shuffled off the Ponder, so we don't have to worry about them having some really sweet rips over there. Let's start with a Ponder. Another Tamiyo is the sort of thing I'm interested in. I don't know if we want this Edict, though. So I'll put that down for now, with a Brainstorm on top that we can draw next turn. Then we can just play this island and deploy another Tamiyo. Just our little Kamigawa theme deck here. Okay. So now we want to Brainstorm into... So we can either Brainstorm or we can tap this down so it never gets to put in its thing. And I think that's actually quite a good use of our time. So let's see what they reveal here. They might go for something they can play, like a Cryptic Coat. But we still have to respect that they might have a Cauldron in hand if they go and get the Cryptic Coat. So let's see what our opponent chooses. Okay, they've gone for the Cauldron. So this means we do need to put the Kaito in this turn, I think. So the other options, we have two options. We have Brainstorm into the Sheoldred's Edict. Sheoldred's Edict this, and then kind of carry on with our life. But Kaito is very hard for our opponent to deal with. They can't counterspell it this turn. I think it's just correct to attack and get the Kaito in. It is a shame to have to use it to tap down straight away, but I think that's better than getting hit by a Cauldron. This Kaito card feels pretty messed up. It's a ninja. And then we can tap target creature for 2 stun counters on it. So this won't be able to make a Cauldron for a while. And then this Kaito can just sort of run away with things, as it's wont to do. I'm going to plus on this. I think I want to play out a Tamiyo. Then I'm going to attack with our large friend. And I'm going to move some cards around with a Brainstorm and trigger our Tamiyo. Okay, I like what I'm seeing here. I don't think we need a Yuriko at this point. Although, is that better than a Brainstorm? Like, we're taking the land. We're taking the Edict. So put those over this side. Then we have to decide if we want... Which of these 2 cards are... Sorry, which of these 3 cards are we keeping? Brainstorm is the most generically good card here. Baleful Strix, probably not great into our opponent's deck. Yeah, it probably should be the Brainstorm here. So this flips. We can plus this. We can play this. We don't have to Sheoldred's Edict now if we don't want to anyway. But it does allow us to be more mana efficient on the next turn. And Kaito's just going to do Kaito things. Ponder. Shot. So we can Edict this turn, so we don't have to go downstairs with this, and we can just do the Surveil. Are we going to see another colour? We are. So this is going to be like Bowmasters and that sort of stuff. Okay, let's crack this. I think we're going to go get another Swamp. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. So either losing their Stoneforge, or if they flash on a Bowmasters, they can lose that. I'm expecting the Bowmasters here. They could surprise us with a Snapcaster Mage, I suppose. There is the Bowmasters. Bowmasters not great into the Tamiyo. They're putting 1 damage onto our Kaito, so it can't tap stuff down. Sure. And now we're getting a Force of Will as well. Interesting. So we can just minus this Tamiyo if we want to. Get back the Sheoldred's Edict. Make them sacrifice a non-token creature. So they have to lose either their Bowmasters or their Stoneforge. If they lose the Stoneforge, then we don't really care. We can just kind of carry on doing our stuff. I think this is fine. We're going to get back this Sheoldred's Edict here. And then we're going to fire this off again. So non-token creature of their choice. Which one is more important to your opponent? Okay, so they got rid of the Stoneforge. That is interesting. So we could brainstorm now that there's no Bowmasters around. We have the Fatal Push, which is what we want. I suppose neither of these really matter. Although we get to draw a card off of the Kaito if it connects. Our opponent hasn't lost any life this turn though. We're going to lose our Tamiyo for this, but I think that's okay. So we want to keep the Fatal Push to kill this. Do we want the land to play around Daze? I don't know if our opponent's running Daze. Maybe that means we have to put them like this so that we can play around the Daze because we don't want to get caught out by it. So I believe we're just going to pump some ninjas here. This isn't a creature on our turn, so we will lose the Tamiyo, but the Tamiyo has done plenty. We've got an extra card out of it waiting over here. We've got the ability, we have the ability to get back a thing as well. Our opponent's dead to this Kaito, so if they attack the Tamiyo and don't play a creature, they're dead. In my experience, in these sort of like control-y-ish mirrors or whatever, or, you know, in this sort of the blue X decks, the Kaito is always absolutely savage. It's such a difficult card to beat. Like, they've got Prismatic Ending, but they can't get up to 4 with it. Right, so we've lost a Tamiyo. Our opponent's got 2 cards and a Cauldron in hand. We don't really count this as a card for the purposes of right now. Stock Up. This is a very good one for our opponent. They have to have something like an Endurance. No, not an Endurance. Solitude. But then they would have to Solitude their own creature. So the Solitude would have to come in and Solitude itself to buy them another turn. Alright. Kaito being a boss, as always. I do not want to 2-for-1 myself if I can avoid it, so I'm interested in removing these Force of Wills. I do like these Thought Seizes. I like these Dismembers. Our opponent's mana base is definitely going to be worse than ours because they're 3 colours rather than 2. But I don't know if we want to fight over this sort of axis when they are a blue deck. I like threats like Barrowgoyf. It's just a real pain. Just, you know, playing the good stuffs. I don't believe we need this Nihil Spellbomb. Do we want an Engineered Explosives? It can blow up Orcish Bowmasters. It can blow up an opposing Tamiyo, which is something that we maybe struggle to kill outside of the Sheoldred's Edict. That's something to consider. I'm tempted. So at the moment, we're doing this selection of changes. Do I want to do anything differently here? I'm not really into putting explosives on 2 because of our own stuff. So I don't think we're on the explosives. It's, do we want to try and squeeze in a Barrowgoyf? And thinking what we'd have to lose to get the Barrowgoyf, I guess Baleful Strix is a weird one here because it's actually Baleful Strix isn't that good, right? Because they have Bowmasters in their deck. So I think we're just going to have this Barrowgoyf. There is an argument to bring in these Force of Wills, but I don't think we need that. Our opponent's just playing like fair Esper stuff. So let's just blow up their things. Just trade 1 for 1 instead of 2 for 1, and then we'll draw extra cards, and then we'll be happy. So this hand is asking Brainstorm to do a lot. But that is exactly what Brainstorm says on it. If you read the text, it says this card does a lot. So that's always nice. We probably have to Brainstorm on turn 1, just so we make sure... Okay, now we don't have to because we've drawn the land. That is excellent. I was going to say we have to Brainstorm on 1 to play around Bowmasters, but if our opponent is leading off this way, then that's... Okay, so there's clearly a Bowmasters over there. We're just going to play around it and not do anything. This can go and get us a Swamp. And we can save this for a Surveil land later. So this is going to be the Bowmasters, and then we're going to... No, they're not going to play the Bowmasters. They're going to wait for their spot. That's fair enough. They've missed on land drops, so they're just going to have a bunch of gas in hand. That's fine. We're not missing any land drops right now. Alright, I'll play this one out. How do I feel about this hand right now? Are we playing a 3-mana Yuriko? That doesn't feel amazing. Like, it's just going to get ploughed, right? Whatever we do is just going to get ploughed here. But do we just work through those ploughs? Maybe that's correct. So we'll go and get a Swamp. And this one... Should this be an island? I think it should be an island. Let's just jam the Yuriko. I'm not expecting this to stick around till our next turn cycle. I suspect this is just getting a nice clean plough now. They could go to their turn, play a land and ending it. But I'd be very surprised if this makes it around the table. There's the plow, sure. That's not worth our Dazes. An Underground Sea. Let's just keep playing stuff out. We're in. Eventually they run out of removal, right? Okay, we got round the table. We got out of our turn, so I didn't have any instant speed answers for it. This doesn't die to a prismatic ending because it's 4 mana. And if we can start connecting with this, then our opponent's going to be trying to like flash in Bowmasters and stuff. Yeah, our opponent's hand just didn't come together for them. They kept a black-white hand when they needed some blue mana and it didn't really pan out for them. But I think our hand was pretty good in this matchup. And I think our deck in general is quite well off into this sort of stuff. We're doing very similar things, but I think we probably have more card advantage, which this matchup is just grinding of resources. So I think we win that resource battle most of the time. They have better removal, but we have the ability to grind better, and Kaito is such a house. When I was playing the Esper control deck last week, I was doing great, smashing this deck down, and as soon as they got Kaito down, the entire game's turned and I couldn't win. So big fan of Kaito. And we're 2-0. Let's go to round 3. Yeah, just another good stuff hand. Let's keep it. We don't have any counter magic, but we've got some interaction via a Fatal Push. If our opponent does something that makes us Fellmire. That is not a card that you see in fair decks. That means we probably have to pivot and change to having access to a Brainstorm here. Our opponent might just be able to go and do oops all spell stuff against us. Bog at Bog. Our opponent's up to no good. Okay, there's a Lotus Petal. There's a Cabal Ritual. I guess we're casting the Brainstorm now. Put this back and put back a Murderous Cut. We don't need either of these. Should have put them the other way around actually, but we could have kept the ninja really. Do you have a Pact of Negation opponent? Which of these cards is better for us right now? It's probably the Ponder, so we can stop their second wave. Alright, we passed the Force of Will check. Thank you, Brainstorm. See, our opponent playing that land out, we correctly read what was going on there. We know we don't want the top card of our library, but we don't know what basic land we want to get with this. Because we might want to get a Thoughtseize. We might want to get the mana to pay for a Thoughtseize. So I'm just going to do this. Another Brainstorm is okay. We'd have to find us Force of Will blue card. We can take a random card that could be a Thoughtseize. I think we're supposed to take the Brainstorm and then shuffle. Right. If they have a little bit of mana and play out the Undercity Informer, we want to keep this around. We don't just want to crack and Brainstorm now. A Lotus Petal. So if they play Undercity Informer here, 4 mana. Alright, they're going again. So this has to go get us a blue source. And Brainstorm has to be good once again. Now, if there's a card that was up to the task, it's Brainstorm. Wowzers trousers. Our opponent's not going to be happy about this one, are they? So we want to put back the Murderous Cut and the Fatal Push. Neither of these are useful right now. And we'll snap off this Force of Will. Some may say Brainstorm is a messed up Magic the Gathering card. And those people would be correct. Card is good. Okay. We're a little bit under the gun here. We do have a Nihil Spellbomb. So that is something. But we need to have some black mana. And we're drawing another card that doesn't do anything. But thankfully our opponent is scooped. So we don't have to go through the rigmarole. I think they still have like a solid 20% chance minimum to win this game based on what we're doing here. Because they have Reanimate in the deck. They can just reanimate one of their guys and win. So, what do we have? We've got some Thoughtseizes. I would very much like those. I would like this Nihil Spellbomb. I would like some Faerie Macabre. I would also like some Consign to Memory. I think this card can do some work because we can counter the trigger of a Balustrade Spy. Doesn't work against Undercity Informer. In terms of cards that don't do anything in this matchup, there's a few. So our removal spells, not looking very hot unless they do a pass the turn with like an Undercity Informer line. The Baleful Strixes are very slow, but guess what? They're blue cards, so I'm into having them. The Orcish Bowmasters is probably the weakest of our threats. So, this is the selection of stuff we're getting rid of. I think we're going to keep Bowmasters because they can win the game for us. Now, there is an argument to play Engineered Explosives to blow up some of their mana if they play it out. Things like Chrome Mox. I do not fancy doing that. Maybe we're supposed to. I think we just want to counterspell the first thing, or Thoughtseize the first thing, drop a Spellbomb. Now, the Spellbomb doesn't completely win the game for you because they can Memory's Journey if they have the mana, but it certainly does stuff. So Faerie Macabre only beats Oopsal spells if they go with exactly the right amount of mana. Do I believe this hand gets us there? We have a piece of graveyard hate. So if they go on turn 1, they're more likely to have just the 4 mana. So I think we will keep this. And then we can try and ponder our way towards a piece of more robust disruption. But if they go for a line with the exact amount of mana, we can win with the Faerie Macabre. Dark Ritual. This feels like an exact mana line, but I could be wrong. Okay, we're getting Thought Seized. That feels like we're going to lose the game. Alright, there goes our Faerie Macabre. There goes another Dark Ritual. This is 4 mana. We get to see how they sideboarded. Sometimes you get oopsed. Okay, I'm going to pop this out so we can have a better look at it. And see if there's anything unusual going on. So they've got on masks. They don't have any Pact of Negation. That's really good knowledge to have. They don't have the green pivot plan that you sometimes see with the Disciple of Frail Eyes that sacrifices the Poxwalkers to draw you back to winning the game again. So they're just going for hand disruption, and that's about it really. Okay. Let's concede that one and go back to the sideboard. I don't think we want to do anything differently there. They're not running any Chrome Mox type stuff. So I think we're happy with how we sideboarded here. Just go in again. Play and draw is quite big in this matchup, so having a turn to find something else. Okay, so this is a Thought Seize with the Faerie Macabre, and then turn 2 we get to Brainstorm. Sign me up. I wish this was a Polluted Delta. That way we could do a little bit better, because they know they don't have to play around a Daze if we go and get Swamp here. But we do get to Thought Seize our opponent, which is a big deal. They did start with 7 cards though. Unstoppable Slasher. Did I see that a minute ago? I don't think I did. They have access to 1 piece of black mana here. We could just take that black mana and say, you don't get to play spells. I think that is a reasonable thing to do here. The old Unstoppable Slasher pivot plan. It's an odd one. I think we go and get the Polluted Delta. We get the Surveil Land first. And then next turn we just probably end up playing this. Do we get the Surveil Land? Or do we have to Brainstorm here? Do we have to Brainstorm here or not? I think I'm going to go for the Sewers. Baleful Strix, that's not the one we wanted. Force of Will, okay. So now I'm very happy in this situation. So let's go and jam down an island and play our Yuriko. We have a win condition. We have 2 different levers of interaction here. A ponder. If we ponder first, we can set up a really cool Yuriko trigger. Yes, I would like this Force of Will to draw and hit our opponent for 5. Boom. Let's get this down and we carry on. Alright. A Dark Ritual. An Unstoppable Slasher with 1 mana up. They have 1 mystery card in hand. I think this is okay to counterspell here. A Barrowgoyf. Do we need to interact with this Barrowgoyf? The top card of our library isn't blue, if I remember rightly. I think it was just a land. So we could crack the Spellbomb, because this Barrowgoyf is going to be an issue for us. They got creature. They just got creature and instant over there. Yeah, so we could Spellbomb our own graveyard, and then we'll have Artifact in. But we already have Artifact in there, so it'll be a 3/4. Can we let this resolve? I don't think we can let this resolve. I'm pretty sure it wasn't a blue card on top. Our graveyard doesn't matter. We could take their graveyard out so they can't reanimate the Unstoppable Slasher. We don't really care about that when we got the Faerie Macabre in hand. So I think we are hitting our own graveyard here to take the sorcery count out. Orcish Bowmasters is not really the one, is it? But we can kill this on attacks. So this does work. It's not pretty, but it works. I guess we're not attacking into a Death Touch creature. And it's gone. Okay. We are pretty stable now. We get to untap with Hardcast Force of Will, and we're drawing an extra card every turn. A bonus Daze, never sad to see that one. Consign to Memory. It doesn't hurt to have that. Makes it a little bit easier to deal with what our opponent can have. Right, they're just passing it over. The Yuriko, not the fastest clock ever, but sometimes it jumps up. Okay, so we have Force of Will, like, how are we going to lose this game? We just drawn a Force of Will. We've got loads of graveyard hate. Yeah, our opponent sees a writing on the wall there. That was a surprisingly interactive and back and forth game with Oops All Spells there, which is not something you get very often, so mark that in your diary. All right, we're 3-0. Let's go to round 4. Okay, I quite like this opening hand. We'll keep it. We start off with a Tamiyo. off of this Prismatic Vista getting us an island, I believe. And then we just sort of carry on that way. Doing the Tamiyo thing. Being on the plane, getting to play Tamiyo is pretty good. Now, there's plenty of things that answer it, and some decks care a lot less about this than others. But I'm never sad to start the game with this. Urza's Saga. So this is where the lack of wastelands in our deck could catch us out. Depends what sort of Urza's Saga deck we are. Okay, so we're doing like 8-cast type stuff. That's what that makes me think. Alright, I would like to attack with the Tamiyo. I don't think we're putting in the Yuriko this turn. I think we just want to get a clue off of this and maybe try and flip the Tamiyo here. So, am I going to ponder? I think I am going to ponder. Okay, I do like Orcish Bowmasters a lot in this matchup. So we'll put Island, then the Bowmasters, then the Brainstorm. And we'll draw this Underground Sea, and then we will flip the Tamiyo and just start working towards this while our opponent hasn't got any pressure going. So, Kaito is not a thing that gets to come into play next turn, so we'll put that on top of the library, and that means it doesn't really matter what the next card is. So we're going to be drawing that in a sec anyway. Okay. So we can tread water, keep the Tamiyo alive for a little bit, draw a bunch of cards, win the game. They're just doing an Urza's Saga line, which we can cover with things like Baleful Strix. If they've got boots of going faster, that can be annoying for us here. Let's plus this. So we have two options. The Orcish Bowmasters here is very good against a hasty guy, because that gives us 2 blocks. The Baleful Strix is objectively the better card in terms of what our opponent's doing right now. The top card of our library is a Kaito, so it doesn't really matter if we have the Strix in or not right now, because it's not going to help us out this turn. It's going to be a thing for getting through the cards for next turn. So how big is this going to be? So the problem with playing out something like a Baleful Strix is they have the Spellbomb. So I think I'm just going to hold back the Bowmasters here and use the Bowmasters as a way to mess up their constructs. They could have a Pithing Needle in the main deck. A lot of these 8-cast builds I've been seeing lately haven't been running the main deck Pithing Needle, but I think maybe we should have tried to just get a little bit of value out of our Tamiyo first. Alright, so they're making a construct here. Let's see if they get the boots or not, or the Pithing Needle. Like, they're going to have good options because their whole deck is just full of stuff. Now, they might not be like a full-on 8-cast deck. They could just have, they could be like the, like a dual combo style deck where they just have one Ether Spellbomb so they can get rid of some problem permanents, or problem creatures, sorry. Mox Opal, okay. Another Saga. A little on the awkward side, I won't lie. Okay, so we get to jam in a Bowmasters here. Metallic Rebuke. I could double Daze this. What does that actually do for us if we double Daze this? It sets us back to 2 mana, but 2 mana doesn't matter when we know we're drawing Kaito next turn anyway. So let's just ping them for 1. And then we go to blocks. And we protect Tamiyo here. I guess we could have just let that ride and get the Kaito in, but they've got so many Urza's Sagas bearing down on us. So we could go and get some value off the Tamiyo right now. We could attack with a Yuriko trigger and get that going. Is that going to be able to outrace all of these guys? Probably not. So I think this is a turn where we need to play the Baleful Strix. So we have some choices here. We can plus this. We can't block both of their creatures because they're going to Ether Spellbomb one of our guys. That means Tamiyo only takes 2 this turn. Do I want to keep playing this game of bouncing this up and down? Or do you want to just cash this in for a card right now so we could go and get like a Ponder or a Brainstorm back? Is that where I want to be? Where does that get us? So if we just need some removal for these guys, really. That would be quite helpful for us. If we are cashing in our Tamiyo, then we don't have to hold back on blocks with our Bowmaster. We can get 1 point of damage in. If we plus this, then they can spend a whole turn, they can bounce this, and they attack with 2 3/3s. This puts this to 2, so they're just spending time and resources on answering a Tamiyo. Is that better for us than us just getting a card and then having to deal with this hitting our life total? Alright, let's force our opponent's hand for the next turn. So now they have to do some Ether Spellbomb stuff. They probably either Spellbomb our Baleful Strix here, but then we just let it ride, but then we can play a Kaito and start doing Kaito things. And then our opponent has two different things they're trying to deal with. The issue for us is they've got another Saga. I think just trying to absorb some pressure with the Tamiyo makes a lot of sense. So now if they attack with both, they can bounce one guy and then we either lose our Tamiyo or we lose a creature. So they get to take something from us this turn. Patches. Yep. I think we're coming undone in this game a little bit. We've got some great sideboard options in the... Well, we've got a great sideboard option in the Engineering Explosives. Alright, so these guys are massive now. They're bouncing the bird. So they have to send them both at Tamiyo, otherwise we draw our deck. So this is soaking up so much damage for us right now. How useful do I think an Orcish Bowmasters is here? Honestly, I think it is quite useful. I think it's probably more useful than this Tamiyo, because the Tamiyo is going to be on 3 anyway. It can buy back a Ponder or a Brainstorm. I think we're just going to let the Tamiyo go here, as sad as that is. But it soaked up a lot of damage, wasted a bit of our opponent's time. But the issue is, with that time, they've also been making constructs. It's just an awkward one. We don't get to put in a Kaito now. A Force of Will, not the most useful thing right now. I think this is play a Swamp, play Baleful Strix. This can obviously trade not effectively with our opponent's things. And we're not attacking. Probably not blocking with the Bowmasters, but the Strix can trade. It's just getting pretty awkward here. I think maybe that turn where we double dazed the Metallic Rebuke was wrong. It just set ourselves back too far. We could have had a Kaito in, started doing Kaito things, and then our opponent has to deal with multiple problems. But yeah, this is just a classic example of Urza Saga running over a blue deck. Alright, that is a large, large creature there. They're coming in with... Okay, they are coming in with the 8/8. Good. Not good, obviously, but we get to at least trade off here. Would have liked to find some removal this game. Just these Force of Wills not doing it for us. So we have two options. We can either crack a clue, see what we find, or we can play a Kaito, tap a guy down. So we play a Kaito, tap this guy down. Then our opponent's got 8, 9, 10 damage, so we probably have to block with the Bowmasters that turn. If we draw a card off of this and it's a removal spell, then we can do kind of a similar thing to the Kaito. The Kaito forces our opponent to look at attacking this. I think we're supposed to draw the card here. I'm pretty sure we're supposed to scoop and go to game 2, really. Yeah, I don't think we're getting through this one. Let's value our time for the rest of this round. That was tough. Engine Explosives over Nihil Spellbomb. I'll take that one. Barrowgoyfs are something that can always trade into our opponent's things. The Harbingers are a weird one here. I like the Consign. So the Harbingers stop Urza Saga, which is the scariest thing that our opponent's deck does. So I'm kind of interested in this sort of stuff. I don't think we want Thought Seizers against our opponent's deck, which is quite likely to be a Chalice deck. So I think we do want the Force of Wills as our removal of choice here. We want to keep all of our removal spells in, but this is 9 cards we've got to make room for. That's so many cards. I don't like Daze very much in this matchup because they have a bunch of like little trinkets and stuff that give them additional mana effectively. So we can get rid of that one. The Borrower looks good. Tamiyo is fine. We probably need to trim on 1-drops just to sort of dodge some of the Chalice. Are we getting rid of some Force of Wills to make way for like Consigns? I think we can trim at least a Force of Will. But this is getting really tricky now. There's no way we're removing any removal from our deck. So the Brazen Borrower is removal as well, effectively, here. If we're bringing in the Harbinger of the Seas, we probably need to cut just like another guy. Bowmasters is excellent. So I'll definitely keep that. Maybe we trim 1 Yuriko. We're still looking for 4 cuts here. Now, we could just take out these 4 Tamiyos, but then our ninjas get a bit worse. We lose our ability to trade resources. Ponder is... I think they do need to be 1-drops because our opponent is doing stuff that messes up our 1-drops. How do I feel about Tamiyo versus Ponder? Alright. I'm not very confident with how I've sideboarded for this one. What does our hand do here? We have a really key card in the matchup in the Bowmasters. We've got the Harbinger Seekers, we don't have to worry about as a Saga unless they lead off with one straight away, then they can still get some value out of it. I think this is a keep. So this is probably sink into Stupor, pass, untap, swamp, Bowmaster, and then we sink into Stupor, Harbinger. Or, you know, maybe we'll find a different land and this sink into Stupor ends up going into the Force of Will. Our hand is okay against Chalice here. Patches. How do we feel about Patches? Patches is pretty strong. It's certainly one of the things that can run away with us. Run away the game from us. I think I'm just going to take out the Patches. And hope that we find another land drop in a couple of turns. A Baleful Strix. If our opponent plays an Urza Saga, I would very much like to play this Baleful Strix. I think we're going to play the Baleful Strix and try and make it so we don't lose to Urza Saga. This is more likely to find us land. Okay, it found us a tap land. That is awkward. This could check a bunch of their creatures. They obviously knew that we drew this because we wouldn't have countered the Patchwork if we knew we had the Baleful Strix coming. So our opponent can discern from our hand that we were a little bit cold to some of their creatures. Is this going to be a Chalice? It is a Chalice. Our hand does not care about Chalice right now. I mentioned that this was a thing and we boarded out some 1-dots because of it. If our opponent plays a bunch of baubles and cracks them, we can play the Bowmasters in our upkeep. A Thoughtcast. Would have loved to have our Bowmasters in for this turn. They're not cracking this bauble. An Underground Sea. So we could play this. We don't need to shut off the Urza Saga yet. Kaito. Kaito is pretty darn solid. I'll put that on top of the library, I think. I will attack for 1. And then I will try and get our opponent with a Bowmaster. There is an Urza's Bauble. So this could be something like a Kappa Cannoneer. Looking at top card of our library, it's a Kaito. So by playing this Bowmaster in the end step, it means that when we untap, the token will get bigger, but it won't have Summoning Sickness, so we get an additional point of damage from the draw they're about to have. What are we going to see here? A Dismember. Okay, that's a decent chunk of life out of our opponent as well. And then we get to put in an uncounterable Kaito this turn. I'll return the Baleful Strix so we can get that card draw again. I will Surveil here. I will put this into the graveyard and this on top of the library. I'll play a land out so we can dismember something if necessary. And my strategy of boarding out some 1-drops is looking pretty good this game because we just got all the gas and our opponent has basically wasted a card on this Chalice. Okay, so this is going to be a Kappa, which has Ward 4, but we can just freeze that for 2 turns. It is going to cost us our turn, but I can live with that. Once again, we're going to see the power of Kaito. I think this is easily the best Planeswalker in Legacy right now. Now, Tamiyo is a creature, but you could call it a Planeswalker. So I'm going to tap this creature. It is Ward 4, isn't it? So let's get stunned for 2 turns. We get to bash with our little army here. Our opponent is dead. Next turn. One thing that's interesting is because we don't have Wastelands, we can't play an Engineered Explosives for 0 colours but 1 mana. We don't care about this, we beat through this. They have to have another creature, they can't tap Ancient Tomb. They have 1 card in hand. What could that 1 card be? They could play another Patches. Obviously, we can answer that with our Dismember here. Okay, we can just kill them with a Bowmasters in upkeep as well. So we're about to draw another card. Alright, we tied that one up. I like how we sideboarded there. The things I said came up, that's always nice. Do I want another Force of Will in our little selection of cards here? I don't think so. Maybe I like it over one of our blue spells. Yeah, I'm going to have another Force of Will in here. I think I'm going to trim on a... I think it's a Ponder, because at least the Tamiyos can turn into ninjas. What does our hand do here? We counterspell the first scary thing. We have an answer to their Saga. We have an answer to them drawing a bunch of cards. This seems fine. We also don't really care about Chalice. The Brainstorm just goes into the Force of Will most of the time anyway. Another Mishra's Ball. That is a Lotus Petal. We can see something like an Emery here. Right, Metalcraft on turn 1. Urza Saga on turn 1. That is less good for us. Patches. We're not really in a position to deal with patches, are we? So by the time we get the Harbinger of the Seas down, it's going to be too late to stop this Urza Saga anyway. So I think I'm going to go and get my Brainstorm value. We don't have any Dazes in our deck, so we can't Brainstorm into a Daze. We can Brainstorm into Forcible Blue card, though. We don't want our opponent to play a land here. Okay, they did play a land, and it was an Urza Saga. Okay, it's a little bit yikes for us. Emery, Lurker of the Loch. This card is obviously very good. I'm going to go and get an island, and I'm going to cast a Brainstorm. We do have a Force of Will here. We don't need an Undercity Sewers. And I guess the Barrowgoyf. We'll draw the Barrowgoyf next turn. We don't want them to have this. So say no to this. This means they are losing a Lotus Petal to cast to make an Urza Saga construct. Please don't crack these baubles just yet. I was hoping that I could get them with some Bowmaster and get a big creature going. Okay. If we want to, we can draw the Undercity Sewers next turn. I don't know if we get to do that. That is a 3/3. It's quite large. I will crack this Prismatic Vista, actually, so we don't get got by a random Pithing Needle here. Just doing our due diligence there. Constructs are pretty big. We do need a land so that we can play this Barrowgoyf. I think that's going to be our route to victory here. Engine Explosives at any point is going to be wonderful and just blow up all their stuff. A Lava Spur Boots. Yeah. That's pretty good, isn't it? I would like to soak up 7 damage, please. Ping our opponent for 1. I will gain 7 life using half of this card. Alright, Barrowgoyf. You need to be big here. Fatal Push. That's not nothing, is it? We are getting kind of bodied by this Urza Saga, though. As I said we might do. This is the downside of not playing Wastelands. Now, these 8-cast decks aren't great right now in the meta, but they certainly match up well into what we're doing. So I think the plan is to maybe be weak to them, but just try and dodge them matchup-wise. Nihil Spellbomb, you say? What do we do here? We can blow that guy up. We blow that guy up, and then we have to take some damages. Alright. So we are in the blocking, gaining 8 life stage with our poor little Bowmasters. If they crack this Bauble, and we can Bowmasters in our upkeep, that gives us 2 blockers. Keeps us living for another turn, if you can call that living. This puts us to 2. Then we have 5 life gain, which puts us to 7. The problem is they can easily either Spellbomb whatever we do out of play. I don't think we actually have a way of winning this game if our opponent plays correctly. So I think the play here is try and Bowmasters, block them both, draw into Engineered Explosives. Yeah, this is just getting soloed by Urza Saga. Maybe we should have Wastelands in the sideboard, or Dress Down would be really useful. Patches, it's not fine, but it's there. They didn't equip because they're holding up the blue for the Spellbomb, which is correct. Although either play probably beats us at that point. Alright. Ping you for 1. Are you going to bounce my guy? Or do we get to double chump block here? We get to double chump block, so we can still win this one if we draw Engineered Explosives and our opponent doesn't draw an artifact. I don't think our opponent's supposed to give us that turn. They don't know we're drawing to that, but they might suspect we have something. An Orcish Bowmasters, we can make the same play again. This time we're going to take some damage though, which means that the Engineered Explosives is less likely to be good enough because this is going to be able to hit for more damage. If they can play 2 artifacts, then we're just dead. Oh, sorry, 1 artifact is enough, isn't it? So this is going to turn off our Prismatic Vista. Alright, they got Force of Will as well. Yep. That matchup felt horrible. Okay, so I played some sort of 8-cast deck a little while ago, and I've jammed a little bit. And it doesn't feel like it's that well positioned right now. However, into what we were doing, that felt really, really solid. And I think if people are going to be messing around with this a bit more because there's that new Memory Guardian and a few other little bits and pieces, I think maybe we need something on our sideboard to address this matchup a bit more. I don't think we have just enough tools. Like game 2, we took them apart quite nicely. But, you know, we just lost to 1 card that our opponent had, right? They had 2 copies of it, I guess, which was the problem. But, yeah, Urza Saga just soloed this entire game out, and we probably need to find a way of addressing that. Alright, let's go to the final round. We're currently 3-1, so we might be able to put a nice 4-1 on the board. Turn 1 Tamiyo, turn 2 flip it. or Brainstorm to sculpt. This hand seems fine. We're on the draw, so we might end up in a situation where we have to Brainstorm on one if our opponent just goes like tapped black lands or whatever. Gives us a signal they're going to do something busted on turn 2. A Flooded Strand. What flavour of Flooded Strand are we looking at? An Underground Sea. So we might have to look at something like an Entomb. Okay, we're getting Thought Seized. Are they going to take the Tamiyo here? They did take the Tamiyo. Perfectly reasonable thing to do. I'm going to play the Polluted Delta out and hold up either casting a Brainstorm or getting a Surveil land. Let's get a Surveil land. If our opponent entombs in response, then that's going to be a sad time for us. I know it's relatively safe to do so. I don't really need another land, so I can go into the graveyard. Right, managed to get through it all. So obviously Orcish Bowmasters is a card we need to be aware of here. So what we're probably going to do is play a fetch land and pass. If they crack their fetch land, then we Brainstorm. Otherwise, we just chill. Not really in the market for more lands. Let's just pass. I would love to be able to Brainstorm right now and maybe find a Tamiyo, deploy it, but it's just not realistic to do in the world of Orcish Bowmasters in the face of what our opponent's got. You're going to crack this Polluted Delta, or you're going to threaten this Bowmaster. If they don't crack it, it suggests to me that they do have a Bowmaster in hand. Okay, let's Brainstorm now. Okay, let's just put back a couple of lands here. It's maybe a controversial opinion, but I genuinely like Orcish Bowmasters in the format. I think making people play differently, like we're doing here, is really interesting. And you do have the choice to ponder and Brainstorm into a Bowmaster, which sometimes you have to do. And at least the card doesn't just win the game on its own immediately. Like, very rarely does anyone ever get got by a Bowmasters when they like Brainstorm and then one flashes in. Like, we could have had this weird little standoff game where do they hold open 2 mana all the time? Do I hold open this Brainstorm all the time? Oh, Careful Study. Alright, our opponent's on some different stuff over there. This suggests to me that our opponent's going to do some reanimation nonsense. I'm going to cast a Brainstorm here. Because if we can stop them putting creatures in their graveyard, then we can shut off their ability to play a bunch of cards in their hand that are reanimation spells. So we're going to give it a whirl here, see if we can Brainstorm and find any answer to this Careful Study. Obviously a Daze doesn't really cut it, but we'll see what we can do. We have found a Force of Will. We've got some more lands, sure. Who doesn't love having more lands? I guess this is going to be Force of Will pitching the Yuriko. Since we've got 2 of those, our opponent might well have interaction with this. Could be Spell Pierce, could be a Daze, could be their own Force of Will. They only have 4 cards in hand after this, well, yeah, after this result. Okay, so they have a Force of Will pitching a Brazen Borrower. And now we get to see what they Careful Study away. Underground Sea and a Force of Will. Okay, so our opponent didn't find the things they needed to. That is obviously excellent news for us. And they're kind of running low on resources, so if we can just maybe play this Yuriko and start tapping. So they've got back their own Tamiyo. No, this is our Tamiyo, sorry. So if this ever flips, it comes into play under our control, so I don't care about this. Our opponent is now out of cards. So we could just kill this and be done with it. That is a reasonable thing to do here. We can just stop them getting any clues and just kill this. But how much do we care about this Tamiyo? If it ever flips, we get it. If they just accrue a bunch of clues, we can both be drawing an extra card every turn. I quite like drawing an extra card every turn. And our one doesn't cost us 2 mana. I'm going to play the Yuriko. And you never know, maybe our opponent doesn't know that it goes under our control. And then we get access to our Tamiyo. So it's transformed under her owner's control. So maybe our opponent just draws a Brainstorm, gets excited, and then we end up with a Tamiyo for free. But even so, we're going to be drawing an extra card every turn. We're going to be dealing our opponent damage every turn. And we're not having to pay for our extra cards. So we're just going to be in a better spot. We could also just play the Kaito. Cracking the clue. Alright, go on, cast a Ponder. Give us a free Tamiyo. So they have 2 cards, so we might have to worry about Daze or Force of Will on our Kaito if we hard cast this. If we ninjutsu it in, we don't get the extra card. We do get to Surveil and get an extra card. So it's kind of a similar sort of jam. I think based on that, we're probably best off just getting the Yuriko in and turning it into a Kaito. Because Kaito is quite an unassailable threat. And the Yuriko going back to our hand gives us the Force of Will. And returning the creature is part of the cost. So we will have the blue card in hand for when our Force of Will is ready to go. Boom, here comes Kaito. Big chunk of our opponent's life total. We get to Surveil, which is pretty tasty. I think we're starting to pull ahead a little bit. If our opponent has to spend all their turn just cracking clues and things, that's fine for us. There's no available Bowmasters now, so we're pretty safe doing this. Unless they're playing some sort of Dark Ritual build, but it doesn't feel like they are. I don't want this Underground Sea. I don't really want this Tamiyo either. I could play the Tamiyo right now. Alright, yeah, I'll play a Tamiyo. Let's crack this. I guess we're going to go and get another island here. Here comes Tamiyo. Dueling Tamiyos. So now their 0 damage doesn't get through. They only get to deal 0 damage instead of 0 damage. We will block. They might have Kaito of their own, so this is a good reason to play this. Cracking that clue token. Go on, cast a Ponder. Flip the Tamiyo for me. Maybe. They're going to Thoughtseize me. Okay, sure. We have a Kaito. We are in a good position. We can flip our Tamiyo this turn if we want to. It's not the most important thing to do. Let's Surveil. A Fatal Push. I'm okay to have that. I think we'll just put them both on top, I think, actually. It's time to just get rid of this creature. I don't want to flip the Tamiyo. So we've got Force of Will blue card, we've got a removal spell, we've got bonus draw. Our opponent is packing it up. So we saw some reanimate action, and we saw Careful Study. That suggests to me that they are playing a decent amount of reanimation stuff. Nihil Spellbomb is a given because this cantrip is just great. I think we do want the Faerie Macabre still. They might come back to bite us a little bit and not be the most useful thing, but I think it's worth having. I don't really want to play Force of Wills in this matchup. Now, yes, they can be doing reanimate stuff, but I don't want to be trading 2 for 1 into our opponent when we can just have things like Thoughtseize and Graveyard Hate to do that job for us. How useful do I think our counter spells here are? Obviously, I like our removal spells. How useful is the Daze? I think Daze, especially on the draw, we can cut one of those. In fact, we might just cut them both and play a couple of Dismembers. That can answer a Troll of Khazad-dûm as well as whatever. We could just play the Barrowgoyf. Barrowgoyf is pretty strong here. It's just a nice big threat that's difficult to deal with. Now, they probably have access to Archon of Cruelty in their deck, as well as some amount of Sheoldred's Edicts out of the sideboard and Fatal Pushes that can kill our Barrowgoyf. But would I rather play the controlling matchup with these Dismembers, or would I rather play a bit more aggressive with these Barrowgoyfs? Alright, we'll try... What are we going to try? I think we'll try the Dismembers, because we have more card advantage in our deck. Our opponent's deck is not card advantage based. It is more trying to get a certain combination of cards together. So we can just outdraw them. So just having stuff to stop their 1 or 2 things that get through makes a lot of sense. They're going to have Troll of Khazad-dûm in their deck. So we're going to be able to kill that with a Dismember. Yeah, this hand looks really good. I don't believe our opponent is a turn 1 reanimation deck. They could be. A Ponder, okay. We want to see a shuffle here, so not floating the best card on top. So I thought these can take the sort of pick of the litter here. That would be the ideal. They did not shuffle. I do still want to play this Thoughtseize on 1 though. I think that is an essential part of our game plan here. Because our opponent is doing more powerful stuff, but it's like synergistic. What do we have here? A Ponder, a Force of Will, a Brainstorm, and a Thoughtseize. So I believe I want to take... What does a Thoughtseize do to our hand? It trades 1 for 1, but like, what is it doing? Not a lot. If we take the Thoughtseize, then they won't know about these Bowmasters. They're just going to be really good in the matchup. So it's either the Brainstorm or the Thoughtseize. So the Brainstorm can move their hand around and improve upon what they have. I don't really care about the Force of Will. If our opponent wants to trade 2 cards for one of ours, that's fine. I think I take the Brainstorm here. I think it is the most powerful card they have access to, and it's the thing that can enable them to do something really, really disgusting in a couple of turns. They can just reshape their entire hand and just go, okay, here we go. Now, do they cast Ponder? Because then they're down on their Force of Will, because they might not have a blue card, and it might leave them in a situation where they're pondering, looking for a blue card. I think they probably start for the Thoughtseize. There it is. So what do you take from our hand here? What do you take from our hand? Maybe Tamiyo? Like, they can stop the first Bowmasters, but this is still going to be a Hymn to Turak. Oh, they've taken Ingenious Infiltrator. This means that's probably what they're going to reanimate. Would like to draw a... not one of those. I was going to say I'd like to draw a Faerie Macabre here. So we don't really get to do everything we want to do here. We could play this Bowmasters and just him to Turak our opponent. That's honestly fine. And then next turn we can play the Baleful Strix, which can block the Infiltrator if that's what they reanimate. They have one mystery card in hand. We're just going to get the island here. We'll play this in the main phase. We're going to try and get our opponent or anything. I think just stopping our opponent from being able to draw any cards with this ponder makes a lot of sense. The fact they didn't force the will this is interesting. Maybe they just don't care about the damage, so they're going to try and go over the top and play, you know, like a big Atraxa level threat. Alright, so we've got a ponder here into the Bowmasters. So either way they would have lost the ponder. They decided they'd rather let us grow our Orc army and hope that what they're doing is bigger than what we're doing. I don't mind that. So again, this is another reason why I quite like Orcish Bowmasters, because it gives our opponent decisions to make. It's not just oh, okay, I just can't do anything. Like, there are some situations where it feels like that, but a lot of the time it's, okay, what is it worth me pondering for here? We have a Kaito. That's pretty cool. Our opponent could have their own Bowmasters here, so I'm a little reluctant to just jam. They know we have another Bowmasters. I think we'll just hold back on this one. I don't know if they're going to be running any sort of like weird sweepers or who knows what. They might have some sorcery speed removal, like Fell, I think it is. I've seen that in some lists where you just pay 2 to kill anything. Careful study. Alright, I'm going to play this Bowmasters now, because if our opponent Force of Wills this, they have less cards to play around with. Alright, this Careful Study can go through. This is also one of my all-time favourite Magic the Gathering cards, by the way. I think this is a perfectly designed Magic card. Incredibly simple, but you can do so many different things with it, and it's really cool. Not only do I play Magic, but I like to nerd out about it as well. And, you know, I do a little bit of game design on my own here and there. And I just really appreciate really simple cards. Just one line of text, you understand what it does, but then there's so many different applications. Alright, they got rid of a Force of Will and a Troll of Khazad-dûm. It's like, are you careful studying to madness? Are you doing it for like a bit of dig, just to fill up your graveyard as well, for like delve stuff, or dredging? There's so many different applications for a careful study, and I really like that. Our opponent is dead next turn. They do have an Underground Sea still in hand, and 3 other cards. Do they have anything, or are we good? They might have another cantrip, and they're working out if they can tread water and maybe draw something good, or if they can cantrip and get them where they need to go right now. That might be the decision our opponent's making. They could animate dead, get back a Troll of Khazad-dûm. That's pretty reasonable, but they can't reanimate a big thing. They can't Entomb reanimate something scary right now, because they will die to their own reanimate. A Show and Tell. Interesting. That can certainly do some work here. I will put in a Baleful Strix. I'll draw my card. I will... What am I going to sacrifice here? So the Baleful Strix is definitely getting through here. I think we get rid of... We get rid of one of the Bowmasters. If we get rid of one of the Bowmasters... Yeah, I think it's a Bowmaster here. And we get rid of the Tamiyo is fine. So we ping them down. So the idea here is we attack with these two. If they block either of them, their creature dies. So they have to trade their Archon for our Orc army. It's not even a trade. They have to just chump block here. Then we get to hit them with this, which then becomes a Kaito. And then the Kaito can surveil us into some more action. All right, they're just scooping it up. Yeah, that was a very, very solid performance from the deck. Blue-black is obviously the best colour combination in Legacy, and I don't think it's actually close right now. I think blue-black has just some fantastic tools. It's why we see, at the moment, the 2 top decks since Ether Drift have come out in terms of putting top 8s in challenges is blue-black Tempo and blue-black Reanimator. I think Oops is also up there as well. I haven't got the exact numbers in my mind right now, but I think they're on 4-ish each, those 3 decks. So yeah, deck was pretty good. Let's talk about it. So we're playing a bunch of good cards. We're basically just playing Dimir Tempo. We've got a few little secret Psychic Frogs in the deck, and we are playing Kaito. And every time I play this card, I'm just amazed at how strong it is and how it completely changes the dynamic of a game. And yeah, we showed that today many times. This is the best Planeswalker in Legacy, and I don't believe it's even remotely close. I think this card is just absolutely incredible. It's also a Planeswalker where casting it for 4 mana doesn't feel that bad either. Another thing I'll say about it is the general pattern of Planeswalkers of, okay, it has a card advantage option, it has a way of protecting itself, and it has something else. That's kind of like what you want from a Planeswalker. Now this one, when it protects itself, it doesn't just protect itself. It gives you the ability to attack into your opponent. It gives you the ability to protect yourself for multiple turns. It's just really, really strong. And I think we showcased that today. So how do I feel about this build? Well, having a deck where we're not drawing Ornithopters on like turn 7 or 8 feels really good. I do like the little outcast guy, the Changeling Outcast, the 1 mana, 1/1 unblockable and can't block guy. Because he is a ninja, it means that the Kaito pumps end up giving you an unblockable creature that is really hard for your opponent to deal with because it's just constantly getting bigger and bigger. That is an interesting lever to have access to. But there's no denying that the cards we're playing here are just inherently more powerful on their own. So yeah, just play some good stuff and it is pretty sweet. What we do need to do though is address the Urza Saga, because that felt horrible. We didn't really have much that we could do to beat that matchup. So how would we address that in the sideboard? So there are a couple of things. I think the Engineered Explosives is good. I would want more of them. I think a second Engineered Explosives wouldn't hurt. Where do you fit that in is the question. Maybe we go down on like a Harbinger or a Consign. Maybe not a Consign, actually. Maybe a Harbinger or maybe a Barrowgoyf. I didn't feel like we were a deck that needed Barrowgoyfs. Now, we did board them in, but we've got a pretty solid threat base here anyway. Maybe we just don't need the Barrowgoyfs and we can end up having a bit more stuff to shore up those matchups. So we can have like 1 Engineered Explosives, 1 Dress Down, maybe. I think Dress Down is a really useful tool. It also helps in the Doomsday matchup and can help in the Oops matchup where they start going and you at least have a card that you can throw down and maybe that does something as well and stops their creature from being able to do anything. So yeah, there's definitely a little tweak I would make probably with the Barrowgoyf, just it doesn't feel like we need the additional threats because we're not super threat dense, but Kaito is a very strong threat and these creatures are good. I understand the desire to have the Barrowgoyf. It is a phenomenal card. I'm just not sure if it's what we necessarily need because we're very good at playing the control role and then we can kind of win with whatever. And when all of our whatevers are like Shadow Mage Infiltrators, basically, that's pretty tasty. And if you need a big creature, that's what Kaito does. Kaito can be an enormous creature. It just gets bigger and bigger, and it's usually the biggest thing that can attack or block, because if there is something bigger, then it's getting stunned. So yeah, that's probably the change I would make. Just strip out 2 Barrowgoyfs, add in an Explosives and a Dress Down or whatever. You could trim a Harbinger of the Seas and get yourself another sort of tool. You could play some Wastelands in the sideboard, and you can bring them in for matchups like lands, Eldrazi, any deck with Urza Saga in. That is an option as well. You could play a Null Rod. Null Rod makes your Nihil Spellbombs bad, but what matchups do you want Nihil Spellbombs and Null Rod? I guess you're probably looking at Storm, so that you can shut down their Gaia's Will lines. But if you play a Nihil Spellbomb into play against the Storm deck, you're not going to stop their Gaia's Will line necessarily. You're just going to make it so they choose a different line. Now that might be enough to buy you time to win the game, but it's not the be-all and end-all. Surprise Graveyard Hate is quite good against the Storm deck, because if they go into a Gaia's Will line and then you remove their graveyard or the key bit of their graveyard, that actually does a bit more work. So I actually prefer the Faerie Macabres a lot of the time into Storm compared to the Nihil Spellbomb, because also the Faerie Macabres allows you to deploy stuff and pressure your opponent whilst also holding up something to mess up their sort of clutch Beseech into Gaia's Will turn. So yeah, a few little things here, but deck felt really solid. Every time I play Ninjas, I'm always amazed at how good it is. Like, we all know how good Psychic Frog is. Like, we're still playing it here, right? This is Psychic Frog, except it triggers off of each other as well, so maybe it's better than Psychic Frog sometimes. Obviously, that's a bit of hyperbole. Psychic Frog is just always 2 mana and is massive and is banned for very good reason. But, you know, it does a pretty good impression when you're, like, controlling the board with a bunch of other stuff. And Baleful Strix is a card that I just really like. I think this is the sort of card that I think should be playable in Legacy. You know, it's just a nice little value piece. It's kind of annoying to deal with. It's not great. You know, it's not going to, like, blow the game apart or whatever. But, you know, it does a nice little bit of stuff. It extends the game, makes it so you have to play a bit more Magic. And I just really like what Baleful Strix does. I also am just a huge fan of birds in general. But that's beside the point. But yeah, I think this deck looks like it's in a pretty sweet spot. It's got all the good tools in the best colours. And it's really fun to play. You make lots of cool decisions. You get to play with Busted Kaito. I don't think he's bannable busted. I just think he's very, very strong. But yeah, deck is sweet, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And I hope you're all grateful to my regular Patreon supporter who gives me a Ninjas deck to play every month. People like them make this channel possible. It means that I can get a little bit more money doing what I'm doing. And if you want to see decks on the channel, like specific decks, whether it's you want me to build you something or you want me to play your specific 75, your pet deck, and make sure there's a video of me playing your pet deck every month and sort of iterating on it and building upon it and helping you do some testing, then why not check out the link in the description. Go to my Patreon. You can become a part of my donor tier. You also get to see all my articles and bits and pieces I write as well. And you help support the channel so I can keep making lovely content for you wonderful people out there. All right. Thank you so much for watching. We're done for today. Please like and subscribe. And once again, thanks for joining me on this one. Goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.